Hey viewers, my name's Kara. I'm your host for Tuesdays on the Pagan Perspective, and this week we're talking about male witches. And I wanted to record this little clip in front of our beautiful plant before the flowers go away. The challenge now is to find a decently quiet, wooded spot that is still well lit enough for you to see me. I wanted to do this video outside, so I came out here. This is Monday night before the sun goes all the way down. So we're talking about male witches, and of course the text will be in the description, but the question is about the tendency for media and real-life people and things like documentaries and whatnot to only refer to females as being witches, and the male practitioners are known as something else, whether it be a wizard, a warlock, a druid, whatever. And of course we know that male witches are just called witches, but why don't people call them that? Where did this stereotype that only females are witches come from? Do we think it'll ever change, and what can we as people do to help that change occur and to help educate people about it? The person also mentions that some TV shows do refer to males as witches, things like Charmed and The Secret Circle, but they feel that for the most part this is still the case, and I agree that it's still the case that most males are referred to as something other than witch, or may even refer to themselves as something other than witch, whether it be because for a personal reason they don't like the term, or because they have been taught that that's not what they should be called, so they don't use it. So okay, there's kind of a few things to touch on here. So where do I think it came from? First of all, when I thought about this topic, I remembered something that I was recently reading about druidry, because someone has asked me to talk about druidry on my personal channel, so I'm looking a little bit more into it since I'm not too educated on the topic. But I read something in a book recently that I think may have to do with this topic, so I actually earlier recorded a clip of me reading the exact quote to you, so here is that. This is something that I recently read in the Everything Paganism book by Celine Silverwind. It's in the chapter about druidic beliefs, and the subheading says witches and sorceresses. If you have this book, or you can find it online, it's page 137. It says, Celtic women were on fairly equal footing with Celtic men, and had most of the same rights as men. These rights carried over into the priesthood, where evidence of female druids is clearly found. After the arrival of the Christian Church, the female druids were recast as evil witches and sorceresses. This myth continued through to the early druid revival of the 1800s, and the first druidic organizations were only open to men. Modern druids, however, are both male and female, and both genders are considered fully equal. Some female druids refer to themselves as druidesses. And even though this is referring to specifically druidry and male and female druids, I think this basic idea may have a lot to do with it. Christianity came in, and it is a patriarchal religion, and the society associated with it is patriarchal, so I think that this idea kind of can go not only for druidry but for other pagan paths as well, even though men and women may have been doing the same things. Because the male became so much more empowered, then it was like, well, it's okay for men to do this because this is a man's place, but for women to do things like this is wrong and evil, and so they were cast as something totally differently. So even though the men and the women were doing the same things, it was only the women who had the negativity put on them. Like, I know we've talked about the fact before that Jesus does magic, basically. The things that he did, the miracles that he performed, the healings that he did are a lot of what we consider magic, but within that religion it was okay for him to do it, it's just not okay for other people to do it. I think it may be the same kind of idea. So I think that part of where it came from might have been that whole patriarchal shift. Another reason that I think a lot of people use it does have to do with the media, and I know that you specifically wanted us to talk about real life situations, but I do think that a lot of it comes from the media, such as Harry Potter going to Hogwarts, which is the school of witchcraft and wizardry, and they talk about being good wizards and witches, so it's kind of seems like the men are considered wizards rather than witches, even though they're all learning the same things. If you notice, they all take the same classes and learn the same things, it's just a matter of what they call themselves. So something like that may have to do with why people associate the terms differently now. There are also male practitioners who insist on calling themselves different things. I shouldn't say insist, I'm sorry. That made it sound really negative. But for example, we all know that Christian Day identifies himself as the official warlock of Salem. And a lot of us think that that term is negative in itself, having come from a specific background, meaning oathbreaker or traitor, and yet he uses it. So some people who may see him as a first impression or anything like that, they may think, oh, well, that's why male witches are actually called warlocks or something like that. So he's not a fictional media representation, but he's definitely a personal media representation for practitioners of magic. Things like that. Do I think that this will ever change? Yes and no. I do think that it is changing already. People are starting to learn more that male witches are still just called witches. And the fact that shows like The Secret Circle do point out that there are male and female witches and they're both called witches, I think that that is a sign that it is starting to change and people are starting to see that and wanting to put it out there. And just the fact that, you know, people ask us on YouTube all the time. We are real people who make videos about our path and they ask us, what is a male witch called? And if we're like, they're called a witch, then people learn. So I do think it is changing, and I think it can change overall. What do I think we should do about it, or what do I think we can do about it, is just like I said, we just educate people about it as it comes up. Personally, I don't know anyone who identifies themselves as a wizard. I know a few people who either were druids or are currently following a druidic path and consider themselves a druid. I personally, as an actor, I am a female actor. I don't like the diminutive term such as differentiating between a druid and a druidess, or an actor and an actress. I think that's not necessary because we're all doing the same thing. So whether I'm talking about a male or a female druid, I do only know male ones by chance, but you get the point. I don't know anyone who calls himself a wizard. Christian Day is the only really well-known name of a person that I know refers to themselves as a warlock instead of a male witch. And I have had one of my viewers come to me and say, well, I'm a male, I'm a practitioner, therefore I call myself a warlock, I'm brand new to this path. And I said, well, did you know that the word warlock comes from this background and this original meaning, and that's why a lot of us don't use the term warlock unless it's, you know, it's negative. And then they said, oh, I had no idea. Okay, so what should I call myself? And I said, well, if you practice witchcraft and you consider yourself like a witch, but a male version, you're still a witch. And they were like, oh, I had no idea. So, you know, it's just something that maybe people don't know because either they've seen it in the media or they've been taught by someone else. I don't know. So I think the best thing that we can do is just educate people and just remind people that if that is the term that you feel is right for you, you need to own it because that's how it becomes something else. If all of us decided that the word witch was a really bad thing and we all denied it, then that would probably go away too. But because we use it, it's around. So if every male witch denied the term witch, it would never change. But we need men specifically to embrace that term. I can keep telling people that a male witch is a witch as much as I want, but because I'm a female, I can't personally change that dynamic. So it's you fellows out there, you male-identified individuals, calling yourselves witches that'll really make the change and really be that example. Now, I feel like there was more I wanted to say, and I can't remember everything exactly, but I do want to point out before I go that I mentioned druidry a lot in this video. That does not mean that every druid is a witch. They may not consider themselves that because druidry is a specific path, so I'm not trying to say that they are all the same thing. I just think that that kind of concept that I read in that book goes along really well with this, and just the idea of, you know, male practitioners have other things to call themselves depending on what their individual path actually is. Like Eric, for example, I don't think he refers to anything that he does in his practice as witchcraft, so there is no reason for him to refer to himself as a male witch because his personal path has other things that people are called. Eric can correct me on that if I am wrong because you'll see his video tomorrow. Someone might want to refer to themselves as a sorcerer if they think that what they do is more sorcery than witchcraft, even though they're very similar things. But you know, if you have something else to call it, I'm not saying that every male practitioner of magic is automatically a witch, but if you're someone who considers what you do to be witchcraft, like me, I refer to myself as a witch because I do witchcraft. If you're a man or male-identified individual person who identifies with witchcraft, I think that is what makes you a witch. But yeah, so whether it be TV shows and things like that that have influenced people as to who's a witch and who's not, or whether it be individuals and what they choose to call themselves, education is the key to a lot of things. And also I do think that it will just take a lot more males identifying as witch for people to realize that that is a valid thing. Thank you very much for watching. I'm gonna go study with my little brother. He just came over, and I will see you next time. Until then, don't forget to be awesome, blessed be, and goodbye.